Okay, guys. Ubisoft is under fire like never before, from broken promises, with stupid microtransactions and questionable decision-making. How did we get here? What happened to the Ubisoft? We know who back then, and what happened to the gaming industry's 2024 and beyond. So, in this video, I'm going to break it all down for everyone and give you my thoughts on this ongoing mess. So grab your shit together, sit back, and let's dive deep into the Ubisoft controversy that's got everyone talking. Not covering everything here, because the video will be longer, and I don't want to rant 20 minutes like in Master Guru videos, where these idiots who did not succeed in life. They're trying to sell their stupid ass courses to everyone on every platforms these days. Trust me, these are worthless as they be. Don't fall for anything like these scams that will make you rich like them. If you ask me, these are a bunch of bullshit to make them rich, not the one who buys their masterclasses. That being said, please don't waste your hard-earned money and time on these pointless masterclasses. And also, if you agree what I said, a sub to my channel will help me to make more contents like these. Now, coming back to what I was saying here. Let's start with the good stuff. When Assassin's Creed first came out, it was a game changer. The open world, the stealth gameplay, and the stunning visuals back then were unlike anything we'd seen before. Remember the iconic leap of faith? That eagle sound effect as you jumped from the highest points. It was such a thrill for me. But Ubisoft had a unique charisma with these titles. Their games were big, beautiful, and packed with content. They were full of life, secrets, and things to discover. Back then, I thought Ubisoft will become top dog in gaming industries. They had everything: the open worlds, stealth mechanics, which I love, gripping stories, and a real passion for creating memorable gaming experience. But then, things started to change. Ubisoft's games began to feel formulaic. They started to rely too much on the same structures. You know what I mean, the constant clear the camp, capture the tower, rinse and repeat. It felt like a job, not a game. Instead of exciting gameplay, it felt like I was just going through the motions. On top of that, Ubisoft's games started releasing buggy, and though I used to forgive them, it became harder to ignore. They were still fun for a while, but over time it became more about microtransactions, paid DLCs, and season passes than about delivering a truly great experience. The in-game paid pop-up ads, the constant push to buy more stuff, it was exhausting. Recently, Ubisoft has removed the crew from people's libraries, even for those who purchase the game physically. This is outrageous. While I understand that digital games can be taken away at any time, this should not be the case for physical copies. If I buy a game physically, I expect to own it and be able to play it whenever I want. This situation raises the question: what's the point of buying physical copies if they can be removed from my collection? This move by Ubisoft is unfair and makes no sense for those who invested in the physical version of the game. And also, do note, they also cancelled one of their Division-style extraction shooter, which was free to play and supposed to release in 2025. In reality, the game's player base had significantly dwindled by the end of the game cycle, with only a fraction of gamers still actively engaged with the game. The game's eventual decline in popularity can be attributed to a number of factors, including a lack of consistent content updates and diminishing player interest. However, many of the current criticisms surrounding Ubisoft and the crew seem to be amplified by individuals who are using this as an opportunity to voice their broader frustrations with the company rather than focusing on the game's shortcomings. In other words, some people appear to be riding on the coattails of this issue, fueling their own vendetta against Ubisoft, as opposed to offering objective critiques based on the game's actual performance and the situation at hand. The real turning point for me was realizing that Ubisoft wasn't really innovating anymore, the major departure of good developers. What left of them were only. They were just repeating the same formula, hoping it would work again. Games like Far Cry 6, Watch Dogs Legion, and AC Valhalla were okay, but nothing felt fresh. Sure, they had beautiful worlds, but the magic was gone. The excitement I once had for their releases faded as I realized Ubisoft was more focused on milking their fan base than on creating something new and exciting. Now coming back present-day controversy, now we have AC Mirage and AC Shadows trailers. I'll admit, I was excited when I saw the ninja concept for Shadows. But then, the Yasuki trailer dropped with rap music, and it just didn't sit right with me. It reminded me of the issues in Far Cry 6, Ubisoft pushing agendas instead of focusing on the game itself. The community's reaction was mixed at best. It feels like they've forgotten the importance of listening to their audience. Then there were the controversies. From the treatment of the original creators of Assassin's Creed to the questionable decisions surrounding Far Cry 6, it started to feel like Ubisoft wasn't listening to their fans. And when they doubled down with things like NFTs and the live service garbage with Skull and Bones, it felt like they had lost touch with the people who supported them for years. The stock drop and internal investigations only added fuel to the fire. I don't know about the new Assassin's Creed game, how it's going to play. Will AC Shadows be a hit? Who knows? Ubisoft's leadership seems stuck in a loop, just like what happened to Blizzard when their original team members left. If they don't make some serious changes, I'm worried the company will continue to fall. But here's the thing. I still want Ubisoft to succeed. They have so much potential. Their worlds are gorgeous, their gameplay can be amazing, but if they don't start listening to their fans and innovate again, they're going to keep losing their audience. Ubisoft's games are generally enjoyable. While their formula can feel repetitive at times, it still offers a good amount of variability. Many of their titles provide flexibility in playstyles, and the diverse layouts of enemy outposts allow multiple approaches, keeping the gameplay fresh. The problem, however, is that this formula has led to stagnation. Ubisoft seems to have adopted the "if it isn't broken, don't fix it" mentality. When a formula works, it's easy to overlook criticisms, but this mindset can limit innovation. One of the main factors holding Ubisoft back is the pressure to release games on a regular, yearly schedule. This prioritization of profits over creativity stifles the artistry of their games. Developers might be passionate about their work, but the company's focus on meeting deadlines to appease investors sometimes undermines this creativity. In contrast, Rockstar is a prime example of how a company can take its time and deliver remarkable results. Red Dead Redemption 2, for instance, took 8 years to develop, and it shows in its level of detail. Similarly, GTA 6, in development since 2014, is expected to launch in 2025 after more than a decade. Ubisoft could learn from this approach. That said, Ubisoft has made strides in recent years. Like after Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, the rest of the series went in a wrong direction as the company took more time between releases. The Origins, the Odyssey, and Valhalla continued this trend, and now with Assassin's Creed Mirage, we see the development time extended even further, with the game being in the works for over 4 years. There's also a troubling comparison to Blizzard here, with both companies facing accusations of fostering toxic work environments. It's unfortunate to see that issues of misconduct have affected some of the biggest names in gaming. On a more personal note, the anti-woke rhetoric and culture war nonsense on the internet is something I actively avoid. After going through the chaos of the great meme war of 2016, I've learned not to engage in those echo chambers. It's healthier to avoid content that thrives on negativity, division, and hate. I believe that if content can't stand on its own merits without resorting to divisiveness, it's simply not worth my time. Ubisoft lost its way when it started prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives over creative integrity. Instead of pushing boundaries with fresh ideas, they became more focused on rehashing the same games, simply tweaking settings and swapping characters. This shift was further fueled by an overemphasis on microtransactions and cosmetic items, a clear sign of their shift toward a profit-first mentality. The delay of Shadows during Black History Month speaks volumes about their priorities. For example, the character Kay Vess was originally intended to be Indian or Persian, but last-minute changes turned her into a mixed heritage character with a Latina voice actor. Similarly, Shadows already had an original model, but they decided to change it to a black character, seemingly to meet a certain diversity quota.
This isn't just about diversity anymore. It's about misinterpreting the term woke and mixing it up with DEI agendas. And thank goodness NFTs were a bust. Ubisoft's attempt to integrate them into their games was a major turnoff for fans. To make matters worse, the company, like many others, started locking in-game content behind paywalls. Meanwhile, Capcom and Koei Tecmo, among others, have managed to get away with similar practices without facing the same backlash. This trend is a reminder of how corporate greed can hijack the soul of gaming, putting profits over quality and player experience. With that said, now, let's talk about the state of modern AAA games. Specifically, the big-budget releases that often leave us scratching our heads and questioning, is this really the best they could do? These are the games that, despite costing $70, seem rushed, unfinished, and almost intentionally designed to frustrate players. First off, the rush to release these games is painfully obvious. Developers push games out the door with glaring bugs and unfinished mechanics that make you feel like you're playing a beta. And the worst part? The basics are often left out. A game that costs $70 should at least offer polished mechanics and smooth gameplay. Yet we're seeing incomplete systems that break immersion, leaving players frustrated and asking, why is this even here? Another issue is the lack of player freedom. Games force you into a specific way of playing, restricting what should be a sandbox for creativity. No alternative paths, no real choice. You're trapped in a tutorial that never ends, and the countdown clock begins when you wander too far off the beaten path. You can't swim, you can't interact with NPCs, you can't even keep weapons you find unless they're yours. It's like the game is telling you, this is how you play, and that's it. But where's the freedom? Where's the immersion that lets players decide how they want to experience the story? Now let's talk about marketing tactics. More and more, we're seeing games introduce systems where you can buy experience points or in-game advantages. Sure, this is the trend now, but it's a slap in the face to players who just want to enjoy the game without being bombarded by microtransactions. What happened to the days when games respected their audience enough to offer a complete, well-balanced experience? The focus on monetization instead of quality is alienating to fans, and it's becoming more of a trend than ever. And let's not even get started on the AI. It's like developers are relying on outdated mechanics that make the world feel lifeless. NPCs don't react to your presence in a meaningful way. You run into objects, and it feels like you're just clipping through them with no real interaction. Unlike the nuanced world building seen in titles like Red Dead Redemption 2, where even hitting a tree with your horse feels real. This kind of detail is missing in many of today's big releases, and it hurts the overall immersion. For seasoned players, the lack of difficulty is another issue. Games today are getting easier and easier, making it almost impossible to find a real challenge. Developers are focusing too much on accessibility at the cost of giving hardcore gamers something to sink their teeth into. It's not about excluding people, but rather finding that sweet spot where both casual and seasoned players can enjoy the game. And the user interface. It looks like someone slapped a bunch of flashing lights on a Christmas tree. It's overcrowded, confusing, and detracts from the experience. A clean, simple interface should guide the player, not bombard them with so many icons that they don't know where to look first. The thing is, there are better alternatives every year. You can't help but compare the latest AAA released to other games that do it better, whether it's smoother gameplay, more freedom, or just an overall more polished experience. It's hard to ignore how quickly other developers are surpassing these giants, and it's only getting more obvious as time goes on. And if that wasn't enough, there's also been a growing backlash against the political undertones in these games. It's not about the message itself, but how it's delivered, often with no subtlety or regard for the audience. These games try to inject modern politics into their stories, sometimes polarizing their player base in the process. It's a tactic that has backfired on companies like Disney and Marvel, and it's no different here. When players feel like they're being lectured instead of entertained, it's a surefire way to alienate them. Look, it's not that these issues are new. It's just that they're becoming more obvious with every release. The cracks are showing, and it's clear that many of these studios aren't as invested in their audience as they claim to be. They're too focused on making money, pushing out unfinished products and checking off political boxes, rather than respecting the player's time and experience. Something needs to change in the way AAA games are developed, marketed, and delivered to us. Players deserve better. And until these studios start listening, we'll continue to be left with broken, overhyped products that fall short of our expectations. In the past, the criticism was mostly focused on the overused game mechanics that became a staple in many of their franchise titles. But now, the criticism has gone much deeper. Being blatantly detached from reality and openly self-absorbed in front of your customers is never a good look for any company. Lately, though, it seems they take pleasure in doing it with increasing regularity, like clockwork, every quarter. It's as if they've grown numb to the damage, proudly flaunting their arrogance with no regard for the consequences. We're seeing games that have been in development for years, and it's clear that the shift in hiring practices a few years ago has had a negative impact. The results? A mess of overpriced products that fall short in nearly every way. One of the biggest issues is the growing trend of not owning the games we buy. We're being told we need to get used to not having control over our purchases. Add to that the recent moves like canceling inactive accounts and restricting access to games, and it's clear that players are being treated more like commodities than customers. And let's not forget the NFT fiasco. This was a major talking point a while back. Fortunately, it has died down for now, but it shows just how out of touch the company was with its audience. Then there's the increasingly common practice of launching broken games. Day one patches have become the norm, with studios clearly willing to release unfinished products, knowing that customers will still buy them. It's becoming painfully obvious that the skill level and gameplay quality have significantly declined. Add in boneheaded narrative choices that often feel like they're more about pushing an agenda than creating a compelling story, and the product suffers. Take all of this, a combination of overpriced, years-long development games, buggy releases, a shift towards anti-consumer practices, and a lack of respect for player feedback, and you've got a recipe for disaster. The market is finally at a breaking point, and people are tired of it. Even with all the issues surrounding their new game Assassin's Creed Shadows, they were on the verge of releasing it, knowing full well that it was nowhere near ready. If it wasn't for their current financial struggles, they were fully prepared to release an unfinished product into a market that's had enough. Do I want them to fail? Honestly, I don't have a personal vendetta against Ubisoft. But given everything they've done, I can't say I'm upset that their sales are struggling. It's time for the industry to realize that players deserve better. And right now, Ubisoft isn't delivering. Thanks for watching. If you agree or have your own thoughts on Ubisoft's decline, drop a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing contents. See you next time. Peace out.